Amaka the food seller. Part A. In a quiet village nestled at the edge of an ancient forest, there lived a woman named Amaka. Known for her skill in preparing delicious meals, Amaka had built a small, thriving business selling hot, flavorful dishes to the villagers. Her food stall, positioned under the shade of a grand old tree, had been there for as long as anyone could remember. The smell of her cooking wafted through the village every day, drawing in customers with the promise of good food and warm company. Amaka had inherited the stall from her grandmother, an old woman who had been known for her secret recipes and mysterious tales. The villagers loved Amaka's cooking, and every day she would serve up steaming bowls of yam porridge, fried plantains, then spicy goat meat stew. But while the villagers appreciated her food, they knew little of Amaka's past. They didn't know about the strange things her grandmother had whispered to her, nor the warnings that echoed in the back of her mind whenever the sun began to set. Her grandmother had often told her stories of the forest, of creatures that roamed the shadows and spirits that wandered in the dark. Never go into the forest after dark, she had said, for the night holds things that should not be disturbed. The spirits of the forest are old, and they do not take kindly to intruders. Though Amaka never truly understood her grandmother's cryptic warnings, she had always respected them. She kept to the village, working tirelessly and staying away from the dark parts of the forest. But now, at the age of 20, she found herself increasingly curious about the things her grandmother had warned her about. One evening, as the village prepared for the evening feast, a strange visitor arrived at Amaka's food stall. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the village square, and the air was filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. The flames of the nearby fires flickered in the cool night breeze, and the village felt alive with energy. Yet amid the laughter and bustle, Amaka couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had just served a plate of yam porridge to a regular customer when she noticed a figure standing just outside her stall. The figure was tall, cloaked in tattered, ragged clothing. A dark veil covered its face, and Amaka couldn't see the person's features clearly. The stranger stood still, watching her with an unnerving silence. Her pulse quickened as she met the stranger's gaze, sensing something wrong. The figure's eyes, though hidden beneath the veil, seemed to glint with an unnatural light, like two pale moons floating in the dark. "Excuse me, miss," the figure rasped, its voice hoarse, dry, and barely audible above the murmur of the crowd. "I have traveled far, and I am hungry. Will you share your food with me?" Amaka felt a chill run through her. There was something odd about the voice. It sounded distant, as if it were coming from far away, or perhaps from somewhere deep within the forest. The figure's words seemed unnatural, and their presence made Amaka feel uneasy. She glanced quickly at the other villagers nearby, but no one seemed to notice the stranger. The village was still as busy as ever, as though the figure hadn't even arrived. "Of course," Amaka replied, trying to mask her unease with a warm smile. "I have freshly cooked goat meat stew. I can serve you a bowl." The figure did not respond immediately. Instead, it moved forward slowly, stepping into the light of the stall. Amaka quickly placed a steaming bowl of stew on the counter and handed it to the figure, but as she did, her hand brushed against the stranger's. The touch was cold, unnaturally cold, and it sent a jolt of fear through her. The figure extended a long, bony hand and took the bowl, but instead of thanking her, it simply turned and began walking away. Amaka watched as the figure's shadow stretched unnaturally long, almost as if it was moving of its own accord, and her unease grew. She knew that something wasn't right, but she couldn't place her finger on it. She had seen many strange customers in the past, but there was something about this one that was different. As the figure walked away, Amaka turned to her stall, trying to dismiss the feeling of dread that had settled in her chest. "It's just a tired traveler," she muttered to herself, shaking her head. But the unease didn't leave her. Instead, it lingered, like a dark cloud hanging over her. The night continued as usual, and Amaka cleaned her stall, preparing to close up for the evening. But as she wiped down the counter, she heard something soft, almost like a whisper. It was a sound so faint, it could have been the wind, but it was unmistakable. Amaka. She froze. The whisper was too distinct to ignore. Her name, spoken softly but clearly, came from behind her. Slowly, she turned around, but there was no one there. Her heart began to race. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger now than ever before. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. The whisper came again, this time closer. Amaka. Her mind raced. Could it be the figure from earlier? No, the figure had disappeared into the crowd. She had seen it walk into the distance. And yet, the voice, it sounded so real. She quickly gathered her things, ready to close up and leave. But as she turned to lock the stall, she noticed something strange, a pale, white feather lying on the ground just beneath the edge of her counter. Amaka frowned and bent down to pick it up. The feather was clean, smooth, and too white against the dark earth. It didn't belong to any bird she had seen before. As she stood up, she felt a sudden presence behind her. A shadow, tall and indistinct, moved across the ground, blocking the light from the fire. The whisper grew louder now, growing into a growl. Amaka. Her blood ran cold. This was no ordinary customer, no traveler or beggar. This was something else, something dark. And it was coming for her.